Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. Today is the last Saturday in December, and I can't think of a better way to close out our year than with today's author, Dr. Leah Grebner, who is the author of The Personal Management Plan, turning business concepts into life strategies. This is something that we all need to do as we enter 2026. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, why don't you tell our listening, viewing audience a little bit about your background? On the last page of the book, you actually give a little insight to your background. I think you kind of sold yourself short with the facts in the back, only because I know you. But why don't you tell our listening, viewing audience about you?
So I've been a health information management professional for over 30 years. My undergraduate degree was actually in business administration. It was a bachelor's of business administration with a concentration in healthcare management. And then from there, I went on to health services administration. And then my PhD is in health services with a concentration in community health promotion and education. I've worked in a wide variety of backgrounds in healthcare, from acute care, skilled nursing, physician office, consulting, and now I work as an educator. I've been in education for over 20 years. Um, I teach a management class, Management for Health Information Management. And so that's kind of, gone into this, taking the management principles into the book.
I love it. I love it. And so, actually, this is interesting how this year is wrapping up. The episode that aired before yours, her book is called Clear and Connected, and it's about communication in healthcare.
Oh,
And I like the fact that you are bringing the business concepts into the healthcare space, because I think depending on the extent of your education determines how much of these concepts you're involved in. I remember teaching a graduate course in healthcare strategic planning, and we talked about the different leadership types. But I think this book is perfect for an individual who is early in their career, middle part of their career. I think everyone needs to really um, be selfish and focus on themselves, because we do so much for our organizations and we don't do anything to help ourselves continue to grow.
agreed.
So, before we started recording, you reminded me of something that I still got to go to my text messages to kind of figure out when we had this conversation. But tell our listening, viewing audience your inspiration for this book.
So it started, back with a conversation that I had with you, and you made a comment about how people should do a personal SWOT analysis. And that conversation was truly an aha moment for me. That was when I realized that, SWOT analysis, something I've always used in the professional organizational context, could be just as powerful to eliminate patterns, strengths, opportunities in my personal life. And once I saw that, I began to recognize how many other management concepts could do the exact same thing. And it sparked a shift in my perspective. These aren't just business tools, but they're life tools. And this realization became the foundation for the first chapter that I wrote. And it ultimately shaped the direction for the entire book that I wrote.
I love it. I love it. So I do remember talking about a personal SWOT analysis, because I did a presentation on it now that I'm thinking about it. But I think it's very important that organizations realize that if you want your staff to carry out the overarching strategic plan, you should step outside of the annual review and allow employees to think about, from a personal perspective, how can I be a better person, which in turn helps the organization. I realized probably about 5 years ago that I was just tired of reading healthcare journals. I was
Mhm.
tired of everything just being about health information management, medical coding, medical billing. And I went back to my roots of just reading. And as I started to read all these different books, I was like, you know what? There's a reason you needed to do this because there's all of these concepts you need to pull into the healthcare space so that we can be a better community. Because I think right now we're struggling.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So you talked about a SWOT analysis, and I think a lot of people they heard about it, but they really don't realize that it's about you as a person, the personal one, looking at what are your internal strengths and weaknesses, and then externally, what are the opportunities and threats.
Hmm.
And when I gave that presentation a few years ago, I realized it was because I started every year creating what somebody else has coined as my vivid vision. And it's my vision for my business, which I'm able to then convey to my team who is executing my vision. But they can't execute my vision if I don't know what the vision is.
Right.
So taking that step back is critical.
And I think it's important to do it as, not just personally and for business, but as an employee, because you're a different person at work than you are in your personal life.
Interesting you just said that. Last episode, the author of Clear and Connected, Jennifer McNamara, we talked about emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
And I think we've heard this in health information management the last, 2, 3, 4 years. But what I've come to realize is that you need emotional intelligence as an employee,
Hmm.
but you also need emotional intelligence skills as a spouse, as
Hmm.
a parent, as a friend, because I think if you try to show up as all these different people in all these different places, you're going to struggle. For
Hmm.
me, I just try to be this one Lisa and um as
Be
opposed
genuine.
yeah, yeah. It's too much to try to keep up all those appearances.
Hmm. I agree.
So, your book kind of bridges some business concepts with personal growth. Why do you believe that people need this concept? What impact could it have on them for 2026?
I think that's a great question. As we're starting a new year, everybody makes their New Year's resolutions and so on. And, they last maybe 2 weeks maximum. But I think, taking this, I think the most transformative principle varies from person to person. And I think it changes even throughout our lives, the different seasons of our lives. As a college student, you're one person. Maybe time management prioritization might be important, most powerful at that time because they create structure during a period where you're going through a lot of rapid changes, a lot of unknowns. But for someone who's early in their career, concepts like setting strategic goals, goal setting, understanding organizational culture, or managing relationships might dive deeper and have a greater impact. But then, looking at somebody who's maybe more in our stage of lives where we're making different transitions, I think what's important is that people recognize which management principles align with their current needs because we're all facing different situations in our lives. But then intentionally implying these and creating that forward momentum that we need, in both our personal and our professional lives.
I love it. So I personally think that one of the strengths of this book is that it meets the reader where they are. And
Mhm.
when I opened the book, I saw that, and this is something that's big for, let's just say big for Lisa. I love to write and highlight in my books. And so in your book, I didn't have to kind of like right on the side, there are places where you
Mhm.
intentionally left them blank so that we could write. And one of my favorite parts is I like how you challenge the reader to revisit their responses after a few weeks of applying that particular management strategy. And I think that's important because how you feel today may not be how you feel, 3 weeks from now. So I love that aspect of the book because it's not just a once and done
Yeah, it's
concept.
active.
Yes, it's active. And even just reading books, I realized that I'll read a book 5 years ago.
Mhm.
And then I open it up and this is, don't call me a nerd, but if I'm preparing for a presentation or something like that, I'll go to my bookshelf. And I think as of today, I have close to 600 books and 600 physical books.
Mhm.
But I'll be preparing for a presentation and I'll be like, oh, such and such said that in their book. And so I'll pull that book down, I'll open it up. I will have highlighted what I felt was important, and I can pull that information forward. So it's like the gift that just keeps on giving.
Absolutely.
So when I said that this book was perfect at any stage, there was
Mhm.
one part that I really, 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 really want the folks who are early in their career, which I think is the ones that this tends to happen to, but about what you post on social media.
Mhm.
Um, I realized, sometimes when you're going through menopause or dealing with something, you kind of have trouble sleeping. So recently, I was in this group on Facebook and I had seen that someone had posted some really like bad stuff, right? And it was in a medical coding group. And so, Mama Lisa sent that person a instant message and said, hey, you really want to be careful about what you post on social
Mhm.
media because you never know who's in that group. And this person said, oh my God, you're the lady from the YouTube videos. And so, so I said, see, you never know who is. A lot of people are on
Mhm.
social media and they're looking, but they're not posting. So you
Mhm.
really have to be careful. And I think that's one of the benefits of keeping a journal. So if you feel a certain kind of way, get your journal out, write down all that stuff that you're feeling, close your journal and move forward as opposed to on social media. This industry sucks, right? Because a potential employer can see that.
Mhm.
So, how have you changed as a result of writing this book? What has this book done for you?
I think it's interesting that you pointed out how you've gone back and looked at things. I didn't have a timeline for this book, and so I just kind of putzed around with it for, over the last year. And I can't tell you how many times I changed what I wrote in these different chapters every time I went back to them because, I looked at it through a different lens, really. And, your perspective changes over time.
Because you evolve as a person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of writing a book, and I have 15 hard copies of my draft. And the reason that I have so many is because I like to keep my history of how the book
Mhm.
evolved. But I take the book with me when I travel, or I'll go sit in Starbucks or go to the library. And I'm sitting there reading the book as if I was the reader. And what
Mhm.
do I want the reader to experience as they're reading this book? So I'm really focusing on impact. And I feel like your book is really helping us with aligning our actions with our values and our long term goals. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in what's happening today, but today is over. There's nothing you can do about today. What's the first step you would recommend as someone begins to attack the, so we can't call it the PMP, but we gotta come up with an acronym for this as you continue to spread this message, because there's a lot of people that need this message because they've lost the personal aspect of them.
Well, and I think it's important to look back at your entire life. Look at the big picture. I based things on where I was at in different points in my life. I looked back as far as when I first started college, a few years ago. And, as I was a traditional student back then, but then I considered how life was different for me when I returned to college as a married with children and working full time individual. And then I fast forwarded again to when I was working on my doctoral degree and my dissertation while I was still working full time. I was a caregiver for elderly family member. And then finally looking at where I'm at now as a well established working professional, at various points in my career progression. But I also took into consideration other things outside of work, other roles in my life, in my professional organization, Illinois Health Information Management Association, where I was at in my involvement in my local Rotary Club, where I was at with church organization things. And so I really took a look at the big picture.
I love that. I just recently opened up my resume to because I keep a running tab of everything that I've done, because
Hmm.
as you get older you're like, wait a minute, did I do such and such? And so I was just looking at where I started
Hmm.
and where I am today, and I am uber focused on impact for this rest of my career.
Hmm.
And really I'm having some tough conversations with myself about that served me before, but does that what I'm
Hmm.
doing still serve me today?
Yeah.
Like, does it bring me joy? Because, as you get older, you don't want to be dealing with crap that you're just like, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah. Your priorities are different as you get older.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that not only do your priorities change, but you start to want to explore some things that maybe you were afraid to do.
Hmm.
I heard this statement recently that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And this was the statement. This was a senior citizen. They said, I realize I have more years behind me than I have ahead of me.
Hmm.
I was like, whoa, that's kind of profound, because when you think about it like that, it's like, wait a minute. Let me look at, as a person, what do I really want out of this next phase of my life? And let me not sell myself short. Let me shift other stuff and people who I put in front of my own interests, and let me put me first. And it's not selfish.
No, it's not. No, it's realistic.
So, you've written this book, right? And in the book you have all these different reflections and worksheets and action plans. Um I believe, since you said I was the inspiration for this concept,
Hmm.
I don't think you're done.
Oh
I
no.
I see you turning this book into a workshop, where you bring together those folks who lost their way, and you help them revive the personal aspects of their lives. As an educator, you know that a lot of times you have women who were housewives, who are um, maybe no longer a housewife because they got divorced, and so now they're trying to navigate life. They need, and it's not a big book, right? It's not a big chunky book, and there's some reading, but it's very relatable. So I see that for you in your future as a way to continue giving back. But I also see this for the younger people who are just like, I don't really know what I want to do, because they don't really know themselves. Sometimes they get defined by their parents or their communities.
Hmm.
So it kind of helps them dig a little deeper. And I think that's so very important to dig deeper. I'm no longer holding back on what Lisa should be doing and what Lisa has to offer to others. I'm no longer holding back. The mask is off. So, what do you plan to do in the next 5 years? So, how many times did you, as you were writing the book, say, okay, this is what Leah wants to do?
It's interesting that you ask that because in the middle of when I was writing this book, I received a notice that my institution had offered early retirement to several people within the organization. I have to say I considered it briefly, very briefly, and I thought at this point in my life I'm not ready for that yet. My husband's retired. Sure, it would be nice to spend time with more time with him, but I'm still developing. I still have things to do. I'm not done yet. But in 5 years, possibly I might be retired. And again, I'd revisit this again, and my life goals would change again. Maybe within that time, maybe I could have grandkids. That could also change things.
See, I love how you're digging deep. And I think if you and Greg were home together, I don't know, you might not be happy. And not, hey, I love Greg. Greg is awesome. So for those of you like, who is Greg? Greg is Leah, Dr. Leah's husband. But my husband travels for work. And
Hmm.
I really think that the fact that we're not constantly
Yeah,
in this space
I'm still
together.
living my life.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you're right. Grandkids definitely change the game. But I don't know if you've noticed this, but I am a person who watches the news at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. But I notice a lot of people are retiring.
Hmm.
And my fear with retirement is, what am I going to do?
I know. I'm worried I'd get bored. And I love what I do. As long as I love what I'm doing, I'm going to keep doing it. I still have young minds to change.
Yes, yes. And because you are so involved in your professional industry, you have insight that can really help take the professional organization to the next level, because you're not out here saying, well, in 1990, this is what we did. You really are forward thinking and really
Mhm.
concerned about the future of a profession that you absolutely love. I had no clue that what your early education was like. So you mentioned that your bachelor's degree, talk about change. Your bachelor's degree was business administration. Mine was business administration too, with an emphasis in healthcare. So it's interesting how you start there, but then wind up somewhere else. How did you actually get into health information management?
Well, I actually will take it back a little bit further. I started as a chemistry major, changed my major a couple times, thought I wanted to be a nurse because my aunt, who's always been my inspiration in my life, was a registered nurse. And so I went to nursing school. And I went pretty far in nursing school and until the point where I decided I hated patient care, but I loved the medical field. And at the time, I was working full time while I was going to school. I was working in a medical records department back when we called it medical records. And my manager at the time, when I decided, hey, I don't want to be a nurse anymore, she said, well, you could go to school for medical records management. And I thought, well, I didn't realize that was a major you could do. And so that's when my life changed.
Well, interestingly, you said that. Now we know one of your missions in life has to be to educate the younger folks, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, about health information management, because I believe people still don't know what it is. And when we, as the experts in the field, don't tell others what it's about, people who shouldn't be talking about it are talking about it, and they're explaining it wrong. I'm seeing it
Hmm.
on the TikTok where they're just talking about our industry, and I'm like, no, I don't think. I don't think Mother Edna Huffman would be proud of you saying that. See, they don't even know
I
about that
know.
history.
Yeah. Well, and we're not the glamorous, people you see on TV and in the medical shows. People don't know we exist, but think about what healthcare would be if we didn't exist.
So you know what? That's something else we got to do. So I watch a lot of medical shows, and I will tell you on Chicago Med, they did have someone that was the medical biller coder type person. They had a little scene about whether something was going to be covered, but I really feel like there needs to be more of a spotlight on the aspect of your health record and why your health history is so important. So
Mhm.
now you got my wheels turning because I'm gonna figure out like how can I pitch that to a TV show or some outlet that can really build awareness about that. So now you've
Oh,
I'm
this is
always
a
trying to
project we
grow.
should do.
Yes, I'm always trying to grow as a person, but I'm also very interested in seeing the communities around me grow.
Hmm.
And we know just from working in the industry that a lot of people don't have a clue about their medical record.
No.
No clue whatsoever. How to request it, right? Just all the things that we know that you definitely will need at some point in your life.
Yeah. Well, and the importance of keeping it private too.
Well, those hackers don't want us to keep our stuff private. They
Yeah,
want
I mean, medical identity theft is worse. It's harder to recover from than regular identity theft.
it's so sad. I'm like, if the bad actors would just spend more time doing good, we would just be in much better position.
Hmm.
So we are almost out of time, but I would love for you to share one final message of encouragement. On the back of the book, you talk about clarity,
Hmm.
and I think that that is such an important aspect. It's like we wear glasses, right? And if you can't see out of your glasses, your vision is distorted. But what's one final message or takeaway you want to leave our listening, viewing audience?
So, talking about clarity, I think the first step is to pause and clarify what your long term vision is. Who do you want to become? What do you want your life to look like? And then once that picture gets more clear, you can begin breaking it down into shorter term goals, then, into small manageable steps. Because most people, if they consider long term goals, if they've never done strategic planning, it can be overwhelming. And so you treat it like strategic planning. Start broad, but then narrow your focus. Create a path that feels achievable rather than intimidating. So that initial clarity is often what helps people move from feeling stuck to purposeful.
I love that. And the most important part is taking the time away from all the noise, all of the, these things here have us, they hold us hostage. I've even started because some of my friends were like, I text you, you didn't respond. Yeah, because I literally have just been leaving my phone anywhere. I don't want to be tethered to everything. I want time to really allow the universe to speak to me about who I am, what I'm doing, how I can help others, and I can't do that with all the noise.
Hmm.
So I'm stopping the noise.
Well, and I think my mom passed 2 years ago, and when during her last few years, I was tethered to my phone because I was all she had, and she had a lot of health issues, had a lot of needs, and so I had to be reachable at any point in time. And since she's passed, I'm not tethered like I used to be. And since my kids are grown, I'm not tethered like I used to be.
All you gotta worry about is Greg. Not that you don't have to worry about the kids, but you need some Leah time, right? To get back to Leah. I've been spending this year really focusing on Lisa time. So my calendar, I don't take appointments until 12 or 1 o'clock after every day.
Hmm.
I will take an 8 a.m. meeting, but 10 o'clock. I'm at water aerobics. And that is my time for me to just get my exercise in, but also just release. I feel better mentally when I go to my water aerobics class. And so that's what I'm doing for me so that I can be in a position to help others.
Yeah, I start my day at the gym every day, 6 days a week.
Oh, 6 days. Hey, I hope my dietitian doesn't watch this episode because she wanted me to switch to 6 days. I'm like, I need 2 rest days. I need my Saturday and Sunday to rest.
I go to a later class on Saturdays.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, mine are at 10 o'clock every day.
Yeah,
So
I go at 7 a.m.
that's not too early. That's not too
Mhm.
early. Well, listen, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Leah Grebner, author of The Personal Management Plan, turning business concepts into life strategies. For joining us today for 52 authors, 52 weeks. I want to wish everyone a happy new year, and we will see you in 2026.
Thank
Bye.
you, Lisa.